I'm Jerry Harris, the Executive Director of the program, and I'm very, very excited to be with you this afternoon. We have an amazing speaker with Ron Muir, and working right along with him will be our own Cindy Bach, who has come to us and just has brought so many wonderful ideas and a lot of creativity to our program. So we have these two facilitators this afternoon. And I think all of us are going to learn so much about family engagement, which is a really important topic and area in our schools, because schools truly are about relationships. And when you have good, strong relationships, you can accomplish so much more. And I really believe that your students are so much more engaged if there are strong relationships. So I'm really, really looking forward to learning more about how we can deepen these relationships and really get about the work of helping our students achieve more. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the very capable Cindy Bach.
Ooh, I like that description of me, capable. Thank you, Jerry, for the warm introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm a senior program officer with the Coates Foundation, and I'm so happy that you're here because we have brought the best of the best to come and speak to you about family engagement. This guy not only is so relational, but he's also an expert in the area of family engagement. Ron Muir has worked with teachers, schools, and districts across the nation, and he has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with us today. What we've done is we've kind of built a Padlet called the Family Engagement Padlet, and I'm going to put it in the chat for you to access. And so you can take a look at that and have access to all the slides and all the videos that we're going to share today. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to the amazing Ron Muir.
I was thinking, you both said you're going to have this fantastic speaker, and I thought, who came in the room? Who is it? Because they can't be talking about me. My name is Ron. I'm a social worker by training. I'm not a classroom teacher, but I have worked with schools my entire career. My first job in a school was in 1981, which means if you do the math, there's a 4 in that first digit. It's been over 40 years. I'm slowly trying to retire. But for the last almost 30 years, nearly my entire focus has been on how to help schools partner with families, particularly to support increased learning. I've had the pleasure of working with someone named Dr. Karen Mapp. She's a faculty member at Harvard University, and she is, if not certainly the United States, but if not the world's leading authority on these kinds of partnerships. And over the course of these 3 sessions, you're going to actually hear a lot about her work. You'll get to meet her virtually through some videos I'm going to share in some subsequent sessions. But what I hope to do today is bring you a lot of years of lessons around what have we learned about what works. The series that you've joined, Cindy sent out all of the registration information. There are 3 sessions, 3 1.5-hour sessions. And today, the first one is about connection. Several of you mentioned in the chat box that you are here to talk about relationships. You want to improve relationships. And that is actually the focus of today's session. Next time, we're going to talk about sharing information about student progress. And in the 3rd session, we're going to talk about how you can help families know what to do at home and actually get them to take action at home that supports learning. And you'll see in the end how all this comes together, and it's all based on the latest research around what works, what makes a difference to student learning. So today we're going to talk all about how to form strong partnerships with families to give you that foundation so that you can ask families to go on this journey with you and do some things at home to support student success. As Cindy mentioned, everything's on a Padlet. We're recording today, so if you want to go back and watch, you'll be able to do that. But all of the videos, all of the tools we use, everything is there accessible to you. And if for some reason after today you can't find it, just reach out to Cindy or to me. At the very end, we'll share the contact information. I always try to find a quote to summarize what the session is about. And this is one that I found that I think is particularly good. It says, whether it's a friendship or a relationship, all bonds are built on trust. Without it, you have nothing. And today we're going to talk about how do you establish and sustain trusting relationships with families. And what you're going to learn is that if you skip this step, if you don't have these trusting relationships, It is virtually impossible to get families to go on the journey with you and be your partner in the learning process. How we're going to start today is I'm going to play a video for you that was done by a group called Learning Heroes. It's an advocacy group for families. It's based in Washington, D.C. You're going to learn a lot about them over the course of this session, as well as our other sessions. And this is a video that they just shared in a national webinar, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And this is a group of folks talking about trust and teamwork. So I'm going to play this for you, and we're going to talk about it when we're done. As I push play here, I'll make sure, I think we've tested this all out, but if you have any trouble hearing the sound, write in the chat box or somebody unmute and raise a hand and say, I can't hear you. So here goes with our first video.
Families and educators alike value teamwork, grounded in trusting relationships between home and school. Even after a year of remote learning, more than 9 in 10 parents say they'll be as or more involved in their child's education this year than they were last year. And more than 8 in 10 educators say they will be as or more involved with families.
Our job is to build whole students, and we can only do that with the relationship with families. So we have to have that level of mutual respect so that we can understand and have that conversation of, I'm going through this, I'm also human, I'm a teacher, I'm a principal, but I understand you're going through this. So how can we work together to ensure the success of your particular school or our school? Getting the parents to see that we are an extension of the family.
While educators say building trusting relationships with families takes time and isn't always easy, most recognize that it helps students thrive.
I use 2 words a lot with my parents: teamwork and patience. Teamwork because we have to work together. I said my parents be patient with me because I'm still trying to catch our students up to their level. I also tell parents, be patient with your student because they're trying, they're giving their best. They give their best to me and they try to give their best to their parents. And I tell other parents to be patient with themselves because some of my parents get frustrated. I don't know why they can't do addition or subtraction. It takes time. I am very comfortable of my son being here because I know that he's in good hands with the staff of the school, not just Mr. Pinckney as the foundation, all his support systems, all his staff that comes behind him. They're just amazing. They're just amazing. And this school is a family-oriented school.
While parents and educators team up, there remains a disconnect between what parents think and teachers know about student performance. More than 9 in 10 parents believe their child is at or above grade level, while only 44% of teachers say most of their students are prepared for grade level work.
Sometimes parents have a unrealistic perception of their scholar and their academics, and that's no fault to them. Sometimes we have to take ownership on the school level of how we communicate academics to parents, how we communicate standards to parents. I've been at the school for about 4 years, so my second year here, we sent home the assessment result, and the parent called and said, "You sent home this assessment. I don't know what this is." I'm like, we did not explain to parents like how to read this assessment report. So definitely that was a huge wake-up call for me.
Both parents and educators agree that families having a clear picture of student achievement is a top priority. And trust and teamwork describe the connection they would like to have between home and school.
Some of the ways that I build trust with my students' families is telling them that it's an open communication. I let them know first day of school, here's my personal number, here's my work number, and here's my office hours. But if you need to contact me afterwards, I definitely would answer. Tell them, call me if you have any concerns, questions, some suggestions. Not doing it like once a month, not doing it like every 2 months, but doing it consistent where the parents feel that the school care about them, that the school is invested in their child, the school is invested in the livelihood of families.
So one thing I always do is make sure that parents know they see me and I'm visible, and teachers also see that I'm communicating with parents and I know them by name. So teachers see me calling parents by name, they see me calling students by name. Our expectation is to make sure that we're communicating with families and parents so that trust is built.
Educators and families deserve systems that prioritize trust and teamwork. What does that look like for your community?
So that was a video that Learning Heroes created for this webinar they had. And that particular school is a school in Baltimore that I'm actually working with. I've worked with for the last year, doing something very similar to what we're doing through this series, trying to figure out what does it take to create a partnership between home and school that supports student learning. And it starts with trust. In that video, you heard the parents say, you need to create a school where it feels to every parent that the school, the teachers care about them. I'll tell you something interesting that we know. There is no digital divide anymore. Every family in the United States has access to the internet. It may be through a cell phone, it may not be through a computer. The question you can ask yourself as a classroom teacher is, for what percent of your families do you have a working cell phone that if you call it, you actually get the parent? And that's a really good piece of data just by itself. Every family has a number. It may change from month to month. But what we know is if a family wants you to have that number, they'll make sure you have it. And a real quick litmus test is, do you have good working numbers for most or all of your families? And if the answer is yes, it means you have a pretty high level of trust. If the answer is no, it's an indicator that maybe that's something that can be enhanced. We asked you to do a little pre-work for our session today. And one of the things that Cindy sent out to everybody is a document from Learning Heroes. This is the one that was just shared about 2 weeks ago, and that webinar through which they shared, that's where that video came from. We'd ask you to read the very short section about trust, how to place trust and teamwork at the center of this relationship process. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you in some breakout rooms for a couple of minutes. You're going to get about 5 minutes. And what we want you to talk about is, based on what you read, did anything surprise you about what you read? Did anything challenge how you think about relationships? Or did anything confirm what you know about relationships? So we want you to talk about what surprised you, what challenged your thinking, and what confirmed your thinking. And when you come back, we're going to ask each group to share either via chat or by unmuting. But we want you to have a conversation about the pre-work. So welcome back. I got to hear one of the groups talk, and I apologize. I should have said this before you left, that if you hadn't had a chance to do the pre-work, just again, continue that conversation about what sort of evidence would you see? And one of the themes that I was hearing from the groups that I visited is that it really is about if there's communication, if they communicate back with us, that could be on the phone or via email or in person, but there's communication, that they have communication with all of their families. What you're going to learn through this series is that when we talk about, you see there the title says, place trust and teamwork at the center of the homeschool relationship. In this series, we're going to talk about homeschool relationships that make a difference to student learning. Very specifically, how you partner with families to support student learning. And what you're going to find is that as we share the research over the next 3 weeks, some of this research is going to say to you, many of the things that happen in your school, that may happen in your classroom, are things that don't have as much impact on student learning as you might expect they do. And what we hope by the end you can unpack a little bit is, what are things that are higher leverage? How do you really out of this partnership get a bigger bang for the buck around partnerships that make a difference to student learning? And certainly that concept of communication and having good, strong, trusting communication with every family sets the tone. Does anyone want to share what you all talked about in terms of actually discussing the pre-work? If anybody got that done, anybody have any comments on that pre-work?
I know in our group we talked about how there was that large discrepancy of how parents saw their child working and doing in school and how teachers perceived their child working in school. And it was such a big divide. So we were just talking about those experiences.
Is that, as you think about that, would you say that that challenged what you think, or that is kind of what you always thought, or were you surprised by that?
I was surprised by that. I think I had, I do experience where, or just kind of had maybe an intuitive idea that perhaps maybe there were some teachers who did not really, were not honest about how their child was doing, because it might be a reflection on the teacher, you know? And so then when they come to you and you're, okay, they're not working at this grade level and I've got to work to get them up, and letting the parent know, it's almost a reflection on me. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's kind of hard. It's not easy.
That is a tough one. And in the next session, we're going to go very deep into that particular aspect of this. What do parents know? How do we help them understand that? And how does that set the ground for getting them to do more things at home that complement what you do in your classroom? So you really do get that bigger bang on student learning. Any other comments on the pre-work? Anybody get a chance? We're actually, just to let you know, going to set a little pre-work, the next chapter in that same document. So if you get a chance between now and next time, don't forget to maybe read it's about 4 pages, it's not very long. And that next section, Link to Learning, because we're going to talk about that next time. What the article really says is that the foundation to all of this is trust. Think about your own classroom. When your kids trust you and they know you care about them, you can actually set the bar high and you can have high expectations, because if they feel like they're going to get support, they're going to rise to those expectations. The exact same thing is true with families. If families know you care about them and want the best for them and their child, you then can challenge them and say, I need your help. I need you to partner with me. I need you to do some things that are going to make a difference to student learning. And when that relationship is there, they will do it. But just as in your classroom, if that relationship isn't there with the child and you challenge them, you may get the exact opposite response of what you want. And these folks pull away and they don't join with you. And I'll tell you right now, if you think about, gosh, it's always the same parents who come to our events. It is always the same parents who do everything. Why doesn't everybody else do it? The primary reason is this: they don't have a strong sense of trust. They don't feel like you really have their child's best interest at heart. It doesn't mean you don't, but it's their perception. So I want to talk a little bit about what do we know from the research makes a difference, so that parents actually say, you know, this teacher cares about me, they care about my child, and they've got my attention now. I'm willing to do something. There are really 2 parts to this. You have to create these relationships, and you've got a handful of families who already come to everything, do everything. They trust you already. Those aren't the families you have to worry about as much. You can sustain that relationship. You have to figure out for the rest of the families, how are you going to build that sense of trust? And keep in mind, they've had a lot of experiences, either with kids in your school, kids in another school, or their own experience that didn't go well with school that affects their judgment about all of this. I have a friend who does this work in Salt Lake City for the school district. And one of the things he's been doing is trying to figure out, there are some parents who are pretty mad at the schools and trying to get some understanding of why. And what he's learning is something that just confirms what the research has already told us. It takes a very long time to build a trusting relationship. It can be undone very quickly. And for many of the families who are so angry at the school, it can often be traced back to an interaction that was less than 1 minute long, where they had a bad interaction with a teacher or someone in the front office or the bus driver. And that one very negative experience now has set them way back in terms of how they feel about everybody at the school. So it's easy to undo, hard to build. And so if you think about this in terms of building relationships and sustaining relationships, it's 2 parts. Just like in your classroom, you cannot introduce a concept one time and kids now master it. You have to spiral it, you have to come back to it, you have to weave it in with other things, you have to keep coming back and reinforcing. So when you build these relationships, what we have learned is the very best way to establish a trusting relationship with families is to make a family visit. And that can be a visit that is in person or virtual. We'll talk about that in a second. That is what we know makes all the difference. You can do many of those other pieces, But if you have a good, strong start, if there's a face-to-face conversation, either via Zoom or in person, that sets the tone. And then you can do some of these other things to sustain that relationship. So I'm going to talk to you about both of these pieces right now. Let's talk about building a relationship through a visit. In California, you actually have something called the parent-teacher home visit model. It comes out of Sacramento. It is the most effective way we know in the field of building strong relationships through a visit. They've had multiple research studies. It's a really great program. And if you want to, you can go to their website. You can look about it. You can look them up. You can get them to come to your district to do some training. But these are the tenets of what they believe. This has been around for several years. And in this, they advocate making in-person home visits. There are 5 non-negotiables. It's voluntary for everybody. It's voluntary for the teacher. It's voluntary for the family. Nobody's forced to do it because that doesn't work. That before you go, as educators, you get a little training on so because you want this to go well. So you never do it without a little training. They also believe that if you're going to spend time doing this professionally, you should be compensated. They don't target students. So you don't say, I'm only going to go to my kids who are bad behaviors or my low performers. If you can't visit everybody, you visit a cross section. Because the minute you start to profile in any way, good or bad, they figure it out and it does not go well. If you make a personal visit, they always have you go in pairs, and that's for safety, but it's also for remembering. I skipped that middle one because I want to end on that. The focus of this is a relationship building visit. It is not a visit where you explain the rules, where you tell them what they have to do, what they have to come to, how many boxes of Kleenex, when, where to park. It isn't any of that. It is that you visit the family and you say to them, I happen to be looking at Greta, you're right in the middle of my square. So if Greta, if your daughter's going to be in my 2nd grade next year, I'm saying, Greta, your daughter's going to be in my 2nd grade next year. I would love to come and talk with you. What are your hopes and dreams for her? What gets her excited about learning? What could you tell me that would make her me her best teacher? And it's a listening visit. It is not a telling visit. It's not a rule visit, but it's really about, it's what you would do if a new person moved in next door. You don't say to them the first thing off the right of bed, make sure you keep your grass cut because we don't like it, an untidy yard. You say, where are you from? Tell me about yourself. And you ask them about them. You don't tell them about you. You know how to do this. So taking the time to do this, particularly before school starts, is a really great thing to do. And I'm going to play for you a very short video clip. This is Karen Harvey, who works at Plymouth Elementary, right in your neighborhood there. They've been doing in-person and virtual visits for a couple of years, and she's just going to reflect very briefly on these home visits.
My name is Karen Harvey. I am the interventionist at Plymouth Elementary School. I also taught 3rd grade for 5 years before I became the interventionist. I have 2 children at Plymouth Elementary School as well. I would say that as a teacher, when I do home visits with families, building that relationship with them is completely invaluable. So that, you know, if I'm calling later on in the year about something positive or negative, it doesn't matter. The family knows me. They've talked to me. They've seen me. We already have a relationship. So they'll say, "Oh, how does it get?" You know, it's not like, "What's this about?" And every time I call them after that virtual home visit, I always, you know, make sure to somewhere in the phone conversation saying, "How are you? How's everything going?" So to keep building that relationship. And I think it makes a big difference. As a parent, I so look forward to these home visits. I love it. I love taking 20 minutes and talking about my kids and myself and what we want from the year, and having that opportunity to do that in person is really important. I've always gotten a paper home as a parent saying, "Oh, write down everything about your child," but it's nothing compared to just having a conversation with the teacher and having that back and forth to make sure that as a parent, I feel really heard.
You know how to do this in your personal life, and you're going to find out through this entire series, there's very little we're going to tell you that you don't know already. It's just not something you applied to this particular audience. You know how to make a neighbor feel welcome. This is how you establish that. You get off on the right foot. Think about if you have, I happen to have 2 adult sons. One is 28 and one is 26. We have to be careful when they bring somebody home to get off on the right foot, particularly their mother, because it's got to be a good relationship. And so we're planful about it. We try to be strategic, and you can do the same thing. So as you think about it, if you have time in this, not this school year, but in the coming year in preparation, if you can find a way to be able to make a visit. And what's nice about the pandemic, there have been so many awful things, but one thing is we've learned to use Zoom. We'll eventually all unmute all the time, but we use it pretty well. And you can do these visits, Plymouth does them via Zoom, and they can get in, and it's actually, they call them family visits so that they don't feel like somebody's coming in check on their home, and they had great success. So as you take notes about today, think about in your classroom for next year, is there a way to do a handful of, not targeted, but some random family visits via Zoom or in person, where you can find out what are their hopes and dreams for their child and be a good listener to start that relationship piece. Once you set that tone, there are many things you can do to sustain relationships. And think about this like in your classroom. If you want a child to master a topic, a task, a schedule, a skill, you don't do it once. You have to do it a lot, and you have to do it throughout the course of the year. There's no one way that works best to sustain. It's often a combination. It depends on you, and it depends on your families. You heard Karen in the video say, she also gets these surveys where people say, you write down all this stuff about your child. That's pretty impersonal. But one thing you can find out is, what is the way you like to be communicated with? And you're likely to discover it's not the same for everybody. So you have to be prepared. If some folks like text and others like something else, to be able to be responsive to what works for families. Don't ask them what their options are if you're not going to use them. If you can't make a welcoming visit, make a welcoming call. One thing I know many schools try to do is if a new child comes to your school during, after the start of the year, within 2 weeks of them arriving, can you make that virtual visit or that welcoming call saying, oh, I'm so glad your child's in my 2nd grade. Tell me about them. What are your hopes and dreams? A really nice thing to do, you see up at the top there, you can use your smartphone, your Android or your iPhone, and you can make a welcoming video. It's not a welcoming video for students. You can do that, but a welcoming video for families saying, families, I'm so glad you're part of my classroom. Welcome to my 2nd grade classroom. This year's so exciting. I look forward to partying with you. You can be looking forward to these kinds of things, but where you talk directly to them, and you can promote that via your private classroom page or your private Facebook page or Instagram account or whatever social media, whatever kinds of ways you get that out there. You can text that link out to families. Regular communication, good news emails. The number one reason families are contacted by schools, the number one reason, and almost the exclusive reason for most families, is that something bad has happened. The child did something bad, they are absent, there was an accident, something is not the way it's supposed to be, so it's bad news. The other reason why families are contacted by the school is us asking them to do something for us. Please volunteer in my classroom, please come to this event, please donate to this, please do something for us. Almost never are families called and say, oh my God, Carla, your daughter, she was just great today. Oh, it's such a joy to have her in class. When I said that, you saw Carla smile. And I don't even know Carla's daughter. And so if you put enough, Karen Mack talks about putting a lot of deposits in the relationship bank account. And as soon as you put enough deposits in there, then you can do a withdrawal and say, hey, I need your help. I need you to do something. Or, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something that didn't go so well. And if you've put enough deposits in, that conversation is going to go better. Anything you can do. Video is so easy now. Talking to your phone, post it. And I'm not saying do it individually for every family, but every week try to do something to keep this alive. Maybe it's 3 families this week. Maybe it's something to everybody the next week. But anything you can do to sustain this puts deposits in that trust account that you can draw upon later. What you're going to do now is a little group activity. And this is one where you're going to practice making a phone call. One of the things we discovered is Teachers are very comfortable talking to 6-year-olds, to 12-year-olds, to 9-year-olds. They are less comfortable talking to 39-year-olds. You're really good at talking to 6-year-olds because you do it every day and you have years of practice. And so if you're going to make phone calls home, if you're going to do home visits, there needs to be a little practice and preparation. So we're going to practice this today. We're going to put you in breakout rooms of 3 people. And you're going to be randomly assigned. This is the script. Now you can take a picture of this on your phone. You can go to the Padlet. It's on the Padlet. And this is meant to be a guide. And what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to take turns. You're going to have 3 one-minute conversations. So the 3 people in your room, one person will be the parent, one person will be the teacher, and one person will be the observer. And then when that one's done, you'll switch roles so that if you were the teacher, you're now the parent, etc., and you play all 3 roles. This is your task. You can use that script as a guide to try to have a call. And parents, there's no script for you. Whoever's role playing that, you just be a parent. You know what parents are like. You've had lots of experience. And so you're going to respond to the teacher. And the observer is going to listen. And when you are done, you get 1 minute for that. The observer has to time it. Observer, we want you to give the teacher 2 pieces of feedback, what she did well or what he did well in that conversation to establish that relationship. And also 1 opportunity for growth. So you start with the positives. So teacher, you can use that script. You can ad-lib a little bit. Parent, just respond. And observer, you are the timekeeper and you're going to give them feedback. The first time you do it, the parent should be a receptive parent. In the second role play, the parent should be a little skeptical about why are you calling? And the third one, you can be a parent who's frustrated about something at the school. And so you're going to find if you go second or third, it's a little more challenging, but to practice. So we're going to ask you to practice it and come back and share what the experience was like. So get the script off the Padlet, or I'll go back here. You can take a screenshot of this page. Cindy's going to put us in groups, and you're going to get about 7 minutes total, 1 minute per role play, about 15 seconds of feedback, switch, do it again, and switch. Yes, I understand, thumbs up. No, I have question, thumbs down. Okay, I see mostly thumbs up. All right, Cindy's going to put us in, and don't be surprised, we won't interrupt, we're just going to come and listen. So first time parent is cooperative, second time parent is skeptical, third time parent's a little frustrated. Okay, we will see you back. In the group that I was watching, the very first person who was a parent, when the teacher said, "Hi, I'm your child's teacher," she said, "Oh, I've never had this before. This is great." Don't be surprised if when you take the time to do this, you hear that from families. No one's ever called me before. This is great. And here's one thing, if you're driving down the street, not speeding, you're just driving down the street and you look in your rearview mirror and you see a police car, is your first thought, "Oh my gosh, it's the police. I feel so safe. They're keeping me safe." You're probably thinking, "Oh my God, you look at the spot, what did I do? And there's a sense of fear or panic. That is what it's like for many parents when the phone rings and they see the school name. And what we're trying to do is undo that. So when they see the school name, the expectation is, "Oh, it's something good. I'm picking up the phone." Think how many of these calls it's going to take, or these connections. This won't be undone by 1 phone call or by 1 visit. It's something over time. And while, these are only an hour and a half sessions that we have, we're not going to make you an expert in anything. We'll try to introduce some concepts. If you are able to make some positive calls, if you're able to do a virtual visit or a home visit, if you're able to do any of the things we talk about in this session, one really important lesson is practice it first. Prepare for, what am I going to do if they ask me something I'm not ready for? And one of the reasons we suggest practicing it with 3 different versions is when you're sitting there and you're, as the teacher, trying to keep it positive, trying to keep it forward when a parent's kind of cranky, which they may be for whatever reason, if you've got a 1 or 2 of those under your belt, it's going to make them all go so much smoother. So if you take nothing else from today away with you, remember, just like with kids, before you go out to do it in public, practice and get your comfort level up so you are ready and you're ready to manage those difficult conversations. So find a partner in your building, find a partner from this group if they're not in your building, do a little practice in advance. That script is there. We'll keep adding things to the Padlet, but you're going to hear me say this all the time. Make sure you prepare for this. I'm going to play you a video of a parent who is talking about what it feels like with her child's teacher. This is a parent from Washington, D.C. Her name is Natina Kaya, and she is, her daughter is I think in 4th grade, and she's talking about this. You're going to hear her mention a home visit. You're going to hear her mention a back to school night. And as she's talking, I want you to pay attention to how she describes her child's teacher. Okay, this is Ms. Kaya talking about her relationship with her child's teacher.
Well, immediately after the home visit, I was invited to a back to school night. They were having a signing. They gave me a little flyer. I was like, well, you know, we having a back to school night. It's from this time to this time. Bring the kids, you know, like the meet and greet teachers and everyone that's going to be there. But one thing I can say about, you know, static period is that it is constant communication, something I never had, something I completely enjoy. And it's not just negative communication, it's constant positive communication. I can be here at home, at work, anywhere, and one of my teachers would send me a text. Or I used to love it, Miss Lucas would send pictures. Take pictures of them doing classwork and she said, you'll see, look how I'm today. Well, I call her Bird. The school calls her Bird, which I love because it's like a community. They adopted her nickname. So she would send me a text like, look at Bird, she's having a wonderful day today and she's doing good. But in saying that, that allowed me to hear, I put a trust in Miss Lucas for doing that. So no matter what she said, how she had to say it, what the information is, it made it easier for me to receive it from her. Because she had built this communication, this trust that I never had. You know, so I tell people now friendship. You know what I'm saying? We're not friends to talk every single day, but she's a person that I will always hold in a high regard. She always had my respect. I really respect Miss Lucas and I value her so much because not just her, but all the teachers, but like she was the first one to really extend herself to me. And I would get the text. And then one day, Tina had a bad day. And she called me and I was expecting to get something good. Oh, you know, she had a good heart attack before she did it. She's like, well, we had a bit of an issue today. I'm like, what happened? Well, you know, Tina did X, Y, and Z. And I didn't get defensive. I didn't get, well, what did you do? What did you do? I actually stepped out and I listened. I received the information. You know, and I processed the information. So we have something different because at that point in time, I felt it like, why am I getting mad? Because normally you call me on the phone and you telling me something about my child did this, I'm naturally on the defense, like, well, what did you do to make my child do this? Or who was messing with her in class? Because my baby's a good baby. But in this time it was different. And I don't know, it's because the positive, you know, feedback she gives me every day, the friendship we brought, it just made, when she was telling me what was going on, I took a breath, I stopped and I listened. You know, and then I was like, we actually got to a place where we worked together. I said, well, you know what, so she's having a bad day, you know, can you put her on the phone? You know, and I spoke with her on the phone and I let her know that me and Miss Lucas are working together. We are a team, you know, and if she asks you to do something, you need to treat it as if mommy is asking you to do something. So she asked you to sit down, you need to sit down. And there was no more problems with tonight.
Ms. Kaya said, when she talked to her daughter, she said, Miss Lucas and I are a team. And if Miss Lucas asks you to do something, it's just like mommy asked you to do something. My question to you is, how many of the families in your classroom talk about you to their child like Miss Kaya talked to her daughter? And what would it take to get every family in your classroom to talk to their child about you the way Miss Kaya talked about her child's teacher? And it's just, you can unmute and just share. You can react to the video, but what would it take?
It seems like frequent interaction and positive.
Frequent and positive. Can you remember some of the things that Miss Kaya said she liked?
She said she liked the frequent text messages from the teacher.
Yep.
And there's ways to do that. You can use Google Voice without giving your cell phone to families, if that's something that you're interested in, protecting your own personal device.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. How many of you have like Dojo or Remind, an app where you can send a message to everybody, or you can just send to selected people? So frequent communication, but she said frequent positive communication. Do you remember what else she said?
If I'm not mistaken, it was the child had a nickname. And so she said she just sort of felt that welcoming, that everybody called her that. So that does show trust and kindness. You're listening.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when she was in trouble, the mom started using her actual name, not her nickname, which I thought, that's so typical. So using the child's nickname. Other things that she said. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
She also enjoyed being able to see pictures of her child doing work too.
For many kids, when they come home and the parent says, "What did you do at school today?" What is the answer? Nothing. What did you learn? Nothing. Little snippets. Just here's a picture. Your daughter's alive and breathing and smiling and doing well in my class. It goes such a long way. It's one of those trust deposits. Is there anything that you do now you think that's particularly effective at building that kind of trust? Some things you do?
I think it's also kind of allowing the parents to know that you understand them. Like when they come and they tell you, like, my child can't do this, or we're having problems with this, you really take your time and you listen to them. Even if it's past your, it's 3 o'clock, past 3 o'clock, but you actually take that time. I know I have a lot of the parents tell me, "Oh, I know you're working past your hours. Thank you so much for responding to me. It really means something to me."
When you think about Miss Kaya, and you heard her describe, I got a call, I was expecting good news, and it wasn't. And what did she say? She said, I was getting mad, but I had to say to myself, why am I getting mad? Because I know they care about my child. And I was able to sit back, process it, and engage in a dialogue with the teacher. Wouldn't you love it if, when you had to have a tough conversation, the families engage in the tough conversation with you without getting angry? And that's something that can happen if you front load this work. It takes more work up front, but if you think about it, if you don't do that pre-work and you get to the tough situation, and this is the first time you've called, it's not likely to go well. Let me ask you this. If Miss Kaya was a parent in your classroom and you called her on the phone, you said, Miss Kaya, I really need your help. I need you to help Tanae with her math. What would Miss Kaya say? What do you think she'd say, Amy?
I almost unmuted. I think she might say, I don't know how to do the math the way you do it. Is like, that's one of the ongoing things with parents, specifically with math, is they feel a little overwhelmed, or they're afraid they're going to do it the wrong way.
Okay, so if I'm the teacher and I say, but Miss Kaya, I'll show you how.
Yeah. Then she's probably going to be willing to help. I would imagine she's willing to help. Yeah. If you're willing to show me what to do, assuming she's not working or something, but most likely, yes.
But Miss Kaya is a parent who, if you call and say, I need your help, she's likely to say, what do you need? What can I do? And that's the place we want to get all of the families in your classroom, where every parent will say, when you call them up, you put enough deposits in the trust bank, you say, okay, we're working on this thing in math. I need your help. And they say to you, tell me, what is it that I can do? That's why you're spending all this time on a relationship. It used to be in the world of family engagement, our goal was we wanted everybody to like us and feel good about this school, and then we were done. It's different now. This is step one, because we now need to engage Miss Kaya and every other parent in the conversation around, okay, so here's what I need you to do. If you can do this at home and I do this stuff at school, together, we're going to get Tanae, we're going to get Bird to really make progress in math or reading or whatever it is. And that's why you do this. You don't do it just to be nice. You do it because now you have this connection, and you can draw upon that and say, all right, it's time for us to partner. And that's actually what we're going to talk about next week, how you start that conversation. I can't believe how fast this time goes. We're very near the end, and I want to share with you, now that you're all in the room, and there'll be some folks who join us next week who weren't with us. So they're going to be able to say, oh, I didn't know this was the task. We're going to give you some optional, like that optional extended learning work. I hate to use the word homework, but if you're interested, if you're willing to, I know it's only a week away, but if you're willing, we'd like you to try to do one of two things. We'd like you to make 1 or 2 positive phone calls home. Just try it. If I were you, start with a family you know it's going to go smoothly. Don't pick the most challenging family, but make 1 or 2 positive calls this week. And if you're able to do it, you can come back next week. We'd love to hear you share what happened. What did they say? How did it feel? What worked? The other thing, if you'd be willing, another option would be make a 1 minute, 30-second or 30-second welcoming video. Just use your phone, welcoming parents that you could post to your classroom webpage or via social media. And if you'd be willing to do that and share a video with us, we would love to show that. So it's not a requirement, but if you have time, and I know life is crazy now with COVID and everything else, there's a lot to do, but if you have a chance, make 1 or 2 positive phone calls, or make a welcoming video that you might be willing to let us share at the beginning next week.
On the Padlet, there's also a link to a Flipgrid if you would like to post your welcoming video and share it out that way. But that's another technology tool that you can use with your families too, posting a welcoming video and then having your families post back a video about their child.
This is our contact information. You can also just email it to us. To bring today to a close, today was about remembering, because I know you know this, remembering that it's all about relationships. Relationships set the tone for everything. Without a trusting relationship, you can't get to the next level of these partnerships that make a difference to learning. I'm going to play you one last video, and this is actually someone who's become a friend of mine. Let me set this up for you. She was the Florida Teacher of the Year a couple years ago. And before I semi-retired, I used to work for Scholastic. I was the Senior Vice President of Family and Community Engagement for the company. And one of the things I got to do was every year I got to go meet the Teachers of the Year. And I was out in San Francisco and met the Teachers of the Year. I got to talk for 1 hour. So I stood up in front of all these teachers. I talked. It was a tiny bit interactive, but I didn't really meet anybody. Went away, did my hour, and left. When I was getting ready to do it the following year, right before I went, somebody said, did you see what that teacher from Florida did? And based on our conversation, she'd already been thinking about it, but she went home and really tried to do some intentional things around family engagement. And a group called Teacher to Teacher, which is a national group, they saw her blogging about this and writing about it, and they contacted her and they made this video. So this is a teacher talking about, as a teacher, how do you make time for family engagement and what's different? So I'd like you to hear from, her name is Jessica Solano.
I've never had a teacher come to my house before. One time she popped up to two of my friends' houses and she came with chocolate chip cookies that she made by herself. It's really cool.
Hey, going this way? Okay. So Michaela has been keeping track of some of her work this year. So she wants to kind of go through and share that with you and kind of
let you see some of her goals for school. So you want to start off with module 1?
On module 1, I got a 45. Module 2, I got a 35. Then module 3, I got a 78.
The reason we do this is because if I just see, oh, it's a 78C, I might think, oh, that's really not that great. But looking at where she came from, that is incredible. I was so proud of you. Ever since I first started teaching, I remember seeing families come in for parent-teacher conferences. Seeing the child next to their family member just made things different. They belonged to someone and they were someone's whole world. I feel responsible as their teacher to have that open-minded communication with their families. I want them to see that. I love you more than I can tell you, and I want to show that in my actions. Hey, Ethan. Lucky. I used to think family engagement was the same as parent involvement, and I learned recently that that is not the case. Changing involvement to engagement is huge because being involved in something that's on a real sense of commitment, where when you're engaged in it, you're taking a stake in this and it matters to you what the outcome is. Fast. Here. Out here in the air are all those molecules like we talked about. In order for families to really make an impact on their students' performance, they really need to not only know what is expected of them, but they need to know where their kids are at in meeting that expectation and how to get them there. And I don't think what I was doing in the past with newsletters and having parents come and volunteer in my class was meeting those goals. Technology really helps a lot with engaging families. I've started doing Facebook Live. That has really been powerful in helping those families who especially can't come during the day to sit into a classroom lesson. Welcome, everybody. We've been doing some pretty tricky stuff in math, something called distributive property. It is really easy. I took home some chart paper from school and I wrote down a few problems and just set up my iPad and bam, we're live. It's more than me just telling them I have a daughter. It's more than me just telling them we got a new cat. This is me letting them come into my life and my house. And so it kind of just helps make that connection a little bit stronger. Bye guys, have a great night. Thanks for joining us. See ya. This year for me, I feel like because I put so much stake into family engagement, I know other things have kind of fell by the wayside. You would have to be absolutely perfect to be able to get every single thing right in education. So I think it's okay to understand that we're all growing. Building relationships isn't easy. I have to fight every single day to build that relationship with my husband. I have to work every day to build a relationship with my kids and my coworkers. And so that's something I think I see with my students. I would love for it to be easy to build relationships with them, but nothing worthwhile ever is. I want them to really, truly believe that they are capable of doing whatever they set their mind to, that it's going to take hard work, it's going to take practice. It makes me excited to know that I'm not alone in this and that their families are there and we're all helping develop this child who hopefully will be a better person because of this experience.
So today was about how to start the process and to really remember that intentionally focusing on relationships will lay the foundation so you can take these partnerships to the next level, so you can help them be something that really does make a difference to student learning. You heard Jessica say that you can't get everything done. You had to let some things go. And I would argue that there are a lot of things we do, many of them related to how we interact with families, that don't have a high impact. And what we want to try to uncover next week and the following week are some things that you might let go of. Not to do more, but to take something off your plate. So what are the less effective practices? How can you put those to the side, even though you love them and you've done them for years, and concentrate on the ones that make a difference, that really do make an impact on student learning?